Now, I'm looking at this from the outside because it's been a hot minute since I played Genshin Impact, and I mean a hot minute. Are Genshin characters becoming too absurd? From Gacha Game, and it's a preemptive like. Now, this isn't the first time I've seen this argument. I've seen some people within the Genshin community actually talking about this, that the characters feel like they're becoming a little bit, they feel out of place, if that makes sense. So I don't know if this is what we're talking about here in regards to absurdity or just, I don't know. But like I've seen some people saying that some of the characters don't feel at place within the world of Genshin Impact, and they feel like they're just kind of hodgepodging things together now. With the design and the aesthetics and the what the characters do. So let's see what he's got to say then, shall we? And I guess see if he's right.
So I'm not sure about you, right, but I feel like after playing in Natlan region for a while, it doesn't seem like the Genshin.
That is kind of crazy though, that you can ride around on a flying gun? Is it a revolver? It's kind of crazy. And I don't know if it does fit personally as well. I think it does in a world like Genshin's world. It does feel a bit weird to be flying around on a character riding a gun, personally.
Experience I'm used to. From character designs to exploration to really weird power creep, things just seem to be out of place. And so in this video, I want to talk about all of this because I find it really interesting the way I experienced Genshin these past few months.
That's kind of cool,
I don't think I'm the only one here.
Place.
So let's talk about some of the crucial things that I believe are affecting the game right now. But first, this video is sponsored by Corepunk, and
yeah, although that does look out of place, flying what looks like a revolver, kinda cool. And going back to what we was talking about Terra Fancy, not everything might hit. Well, you know, I don't have a problem with a game company throwing a few things at the wall to see if something sticks. Of course, we're all going to point and laugh when it's not something that sticks. But if something happens that's really cool, then we'll be like, wow, that was dope. So I don't judge them for it. But again, some of them do look a little bit out of place. I don't know if it's just because Genshin's had these very specific stylized aesthetic and thematic properties for a while, that maybe that's why it looks a little bit more out of place, if you will.
Isometric
like
open world
Fantasy that's just been wild for a while.
That's bringing back the golden age of classics such as old school RuneScape and Vanilla WoW. Not only that, it features elements from MOBA games, where each character has unique and responsive skills, but there's also
from what I've seen of this game, I don't think it does any of that, if I'm honest.
6 classes, with new one added each month, as well as satisfying professions and crafting, plus there's deep itemization and multiple branching talent trees with weapon specializations. And the world is super big already. There's 3 biomes, 12 world bosses, and over 350 quests featuring fully voiced characters by professional VAs. Best of all, there's no pay to win at all. It's a buy-to-play model with in-game store that only offers cosmetics. So start playing Corepunk in early access by using my link in the description, buy one of the bundles at the store to join the early access, and help support my channel. Look, let me be clear first. I've actually enjoyed Natlan region as a whole quite a lot. As you can see, I've obtained 100.
Question to the people who do watch me, who are still currently playing Genshin, because I know there are some of you. How has Natlan been? It won the update of the year obviously for the Gaming on Phone, which is a smaller award ceremony. But it does seem like people are a little bit torn. Now, obviously, you're going to hear negative stuff from outside the community because it's a gacha community, but from inside the community, from what I've seen, it does seem like there's a bit of a split. Some people are like, nah, Natlan's actually really cool. I've been enjoying it. And then I've heard some people saying that they've been very underwhelmed by it and they actually kind of dislike it as well. So I'd be curious to see the people who do play Genshin still and are still Genshin enjoyers. How has Natlan been? Has it been a good update?
100% exploration on quite a few zones. The story so far, in my opinion, has been pretty intriguing, especially if the captain is involved. And I also love the fact you can possess different kinds of cute saurians to explore Natlan. But I also noticed some weird design decisions. So I want to talk about quite a few of them in this video.
Natlan does look beautiful.
I know about the Pyro Archon's motorcycle from Drip Marketing, which I'll cover a bit later in the video. But for now, let me talk about the exploration. Alright, by now,
Do you reckon that's a theme that's going to come into the game a little bit more then? It seems like they're eking in some more sci-fi themes, don't they? And I know in a sense, the crossover from sci-fi and fantasy is easy to do, and I don't have an issue with it. But looking at that and looking at her motorbike, are they leaning into some more science fiction elements potentially coming into the game? Which I'm fine with. I ain't played the game for a while, but, you know, I'm cool with that sort of stuff coming into fantasy games.
Single Natlan unit that
If
came
it's done
out
right.
has some kind of powerful mobility skill, like Mulani riding her sharkboard on water, Kinich spamming his grappling hook, and of course, Chaska can literally cover massive distances with her flying gun. And I mean, if you're in Natlan and pulled for one of these characters, there's very little reason not to use them to accelerate exploration by a tenfold. Honestly, I think part
That is one of the things I don't like, though, the exploration elements that they gain in their areas are not necessarily translated over to other areas, are they? Even though I guess it kind of looks a little bit out of place. That gun, flying around on that gun, it's pretty fucking cool if you ask me.
of the reason why I was so motivated to 100% these zones was due to the fact everything was happening so quickly compared to any other region. However, if you step out of Natlan and go anywhere else with these units, they kind of become similar to any other unit that can move fast, like Yalan, Wanderer, Sayu, and so on. And it's strange really, because I don't know if you guys remember Skylanders, but I was obsessed with this collectible figure game.
I remember
You
that
put the
game
figure
being
on a
massive.
special scanner and the Skylander shows up in your game, and then you can use their unique abilities. And it seems like the design philosophy for Natlan units being powerful in Natlan feels kinda inspired by Skylander expansion designs. For example, in Swap Force, some Skylanders were mandatory to pass certain bonus levels, and in Superchargers, Skylanders could literally ride vehicles in some levels, and you can even buy more vehicle figures to experience the game in new ways. However, anytime a new expansion came out, those Skylanders you used became outdated or less prominent compared to their own expansions they came with. So it's kind of funny how Natlan units are only great in Natlan in terms of exploration, but everywhere
I guess it is kind of funny, but at the same time, it's kind of the business practice of Hoyo when it comes to Genshin, isn't it? It's to really encourage the purchase of or the gamba and the attempt to pull characters in the new region, because you are going to get benefits of said characters in the region, aren't you? It sucks because it would be nice if this was universal, but then if it was and characters had those movement abilities coming into the new area, there'd be less desire to pull the new character for that sort of momentum-based stuff. So it makes sense from a business standpoint. It's not a great idea, in my opinion, as somebody who would like it to be universal, but I understand it.
else they are completely tuned down. Anyway, sorry for ranting about Skylanders, I just wanted to finally find a reason to talk about it on this channel. Still, you know what else is super limiting but super strong for
Bro's been waiting that moment for years, isn't he?
Natlan characters only? The artifact sets. Like, Obsidian Codex is just straight up unusable by anyone who's not have Night Soul Blessing state, but for Natlan units, it provides a whopping 40% crit rate boost plus 15% damage boost as well. While the Hero set, sure, the 2 set can work for units who are not from Natlan, since Night Soul bursts can be triggered by anyone, as long as there's one Natlan unit in party, and even the 4 set can provide a small but decent 12% elemental damage boost if a unit is not in a Night Soul Blessing state. And honestly,
Okay.
for some characters who are just built purely as supports, this can be a decent option. But this set absolutely hard carries someone like Kachina and Auroran, turning them into a similar power user as an animal character who utilizes Vivi set. But the thing is, going back to Obsidian Codex, I honestly think it was a bit too much to design it strictly around Night Soul Blessing state, because, for example, when Fontaine came out, the Hunter set at first was only really usable on Fontaine characters, but after Furina released, it actually became useful for many damage dealers, thanks to the way she can constantly reduce HP party-wide. I mean, sure, later on her
That's where I like that sort of character design, when things that are kind of specific to a set of characters can be expanded up onto multiple characters because something gets introduced into the game, i.e. a character, whatever, a support role that can allow that set or those characters to be used in different ways. Like that's good design, that is, when games do that. So again, when I was talking about Wuthering Waves in regards to support roles, and when you talk about power creep in games, support characters play such an important role in gacha games, and how they affect the rest of the roster, shall we say. That's kind of cool.
Harmonic Whimsy
Again,
showed up and was really only
talking
useful
from
for characters who can actively
an uneducated point here, because I ain't played the game for a while, so I don't even know. I ain't used any of the characters post Inazuma, really. I got past Inazuma and stopped playing, so You know, everything he's talking about here, I ain't got a clue about
Team
really.
Bond of Life, but still, Obsidian Codex is completely limited to Natlan units only, unless Hoyo decides to release a unit in the future who can provide Night Soul Blessing State for anybody in the team. Anyway, so those are some of the design decisions I found weird so far, but what about the characters themselves? So far, a total of 6 Natlan units have been released, and starting with...
Let me just go back a little bit. I've seen the characters anyway, but let's have a look at them. They're all right. They're all right. What's her name now? Is it Xylon or something like that? I think she's kind of cool. I like her design, actually. The rest, they're all right. They're not bad, but they're not great.
Have been released, and starting with Milani, she's a big
what's up,
damage nuker who can perform especially
not
well
too
in
bad.
vaporized
Couple of blown
teams,
trees,
but if you miss
down
even just
trees
one
in the
chomp,
area, but
the damage
nothing
performance
too
goes
bad.
down significantly. Some would say she power crept Nivelette, but honestly, they both have their pros and cons. For example,
Has it been by
Nivelette is
you?
godlike at clearing multiple enemies super fast, while the longer you ride Milani's surfboard, the less chomps you can output, so without grouping, her AoE is situational. Then there's Kinich. The dude is absolutely a menace when it comes to wacky playstyle, and because of the way some of his passives and weapons are catered towards running burning or burgeon teams, he still doesn't power creep someone like Alhaitham, who reigns supreme in Hyperbloom team comms. Now, Shilonen, some would say she power crept Kazuha. But at C0,
I've heard that
that's
Tanaka
a bit
Fontaine
of a
was
stretch.
a great
Sure,
story as
her
well.
elemental shred lasts for 15 seconds compared to Kazuha's VV set, which only lasts 10 seconds.
I do love
so
Genshin's
that's
art style,
5
though.
extra seconds that can be utilized by many more rotations and teams. On top of that, she provides healing, so any Farina comps will want that, and even the hero set provides almost identical damage boosting that Kazuha can do. Strictly speaking, if it's only against a single target, she can often be better option than Kazuha. However, the Samurai Boy can group enemies, which can still be relevant in harder events and Abyss or Theater modes. However, in a moment, I'll talk a bit about Natlan constellations. That's where things take a bit of a different turn. Finally, there's also Chaska. Funny thing is, even though she's so random with those bullets, but overall, I would say she's been an amazing exploration unit, especially in Natlan.
I can imagine why.
Yet again, there's enemies like Tenebris Mimiflora, whose shields can be reduced much faster with Night Soul aligned attacks, so Chaska can easily take them out within seconds. I mean, it's kinda annoying your older units suck against these enemies, but then again, at least it's not completely underwhelming design like Numa and Usia from Fontaine, where I barely noticed their usefulness. And then, of course, we have the 4-stars Kachina and Auroran. It's safe to say both of their values are super enhanced by the hero set, although in Auroran's case, his damage output against groups of enemies and the fact he can apply Electro makes him a surprisingly good 4-star, and his constellations aren't that crazy that you would need them to make him functional. So overall, I don't think Natlan units so far have been that crazy. Maybe aside from the fact Chaska has slightly power crept Wanderer in terms of exploration even outside of Natlan, but hey, there's also Pyro Archon, who's
So it is a nerf, but at least it's still pretty decent outside of Natlan. But the difference is kind of insane, isn't it? Yeah, I just like that universality to go across, so that it just doesn't like drop off outside the current area. Pretty well living in the top floor flat means he's been howling around the eaves all weekend. You got a pitch roof? You lost any tiles, have you?
dreams were almost impossible to avoid on social media. And while I cannot talk about her just to keep my channel safe, I will definitely cover very soon. However, there's one last thing I want to quickly talk about. So, believe it or not, while at C0 most of the 5-star Natlan units seem great, it's the constellations that have been pretty wild. For example, C2 Shilonen becomes an absolute monster of a support, especially for Geo and Cryo teammates. Like, this is where she outshines even C2 Kazuha, and he's one of the few characters I have with this constellation.
This is where, like, I think some of the constellations in Genshin suck, in the sense that, like, it's almost like you gain mechanics, don't you? Where really, apart from like Boiji, who gets the revival mechanic, but she's like a 4-star, so it doesn't really count. If you haven't got a Boiji in your account now, it's like, what's going on? You know, having characters basically almost have a different mechanic or be able to do something that they couldn't do before. Now, it's one thing, you know, having a buff, stat numbers going up, plus whatever, plus 25 crit, plus, you know what I mean, is one thing. But like a character actually being able to do something they couldn't do before, I'm not a big fan of that, because it's like, without getting copies, you kind of don't have access to everything the character can do. which I know you don't in the same sense when you're getting buffs, but it's a little bit different, isn't it, in terms of just from a gameplay aspect rather than a power creep aspect, if I'm honest.
However, I will not pull for any Shallonen constellations simply because her showcases as a support would become just too warped. But that's a very niche content creator problem to have. Then we have Mulaney and Knich. Both of their first 2 constellations give them massive damage boosts. Like, there's only very few 5-stars in the past that had such a constellation power creep. I'm not even joking, it's all I've been hearing from a lot of Mulaney and Knich players who pulled for their copies. Seriously, even at C1, Knich's main big shot attack gains 100% crit damage boost. It's insane. And at C2, he can even shred enemies' Dendro resistance by 30%.
I have all 4-star characters in with max constellation and didn't even realise it for a few patches. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you ain't got like 4-star characters in your roster, it's like, what have you been doing? So like having like, if they did have things like that, it's like, okay, it's a 4-star character, so it doesn't really, it's not really the same. I don't know if I've got them all maxed out. I've got majority of them, but I might have to check that actually. I don't know.
Plus turning first big shot into a mega shot, transforming him into a beast. I mean, you can see some testing I Win to Lose Gaming did and how broken Knich felt. Finally, there's Chaska. The patch team building restrictions become lenient and her DPS becomes a ton better. So yeah, if there's one thing that Hoyo seems to be doing with Natlan units so far, it's the early constellation designs and how much more broken they seem to be getting. We've come a pretty long.
It's smart though. It is smart adding serious creep or bonuses to the first couple of copies in a character, because you know you're a lot more likely. It did it for me when it came to Shorekeeper, getting that 40% on Stellar Realm, out to Stellar Realm, massive. Had to make sure I got that. You know, if that had been like number 4, then I'd have been like, well, I ain't gonna do that. But having those first couple really good, in my opinion, is a way to really get people to spend more money, who probably wouldn't spend money on a gacha game. Personally,
long way from the
balancing it's important, but like those first 2 are really important.
They feel like almost a joke. Anyway, those were some of my thoughts so far about Natlan. Again, I like the region and the story, but I definitely wanted to point out some of the absurdities that are happening. I know some of you may have wanted me to talk about the ridiculousness of character designs, like Chaska riding her big gun, Kenichi's pixelated dragon, or the fact Pyro Archon is shown on a motorcycle in drip marketing, but I first want to see this region's story fully unfold before giving my thoughts about it, because the sky is fake, as one Fandango once said. But yeah, I hope you guys found this video interesting, and I'd really appreciate it if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. We're coming very close to 5.3 update, and I'll be working sleepless nights to provide you guys with all the content you want. So make sure to subscribe. Thanks, and see you.
Good video. Yeah, I can understand some people's issues in regards to characters maybe not fit into the themes of a world. You know, if you've got this like high fantasy universe and then you've got to do a woman flying around on a revolver, or a character on skates, or a character riding a motorbike, I get it. But at the same time, again, I think personally, I don't really play gacha games for immersion. There's other games for that for me, you know, when I want to get immersed in a world. Gacha games are not really the place. Now, I'm not saying gacha games can't fill that void, but at the minute, I don't play gacha games for that. I don't have a problem with absurd characters in a universe because, again, if you're going to praise Tower of Fantasy for having this variety of stuff in the game and trying all these different things, some of them might not stick, but others might. You can't judge Genshin for attempting to bring some variety into the game and adding things that have got a little bit of a different taste to them, can you? So yeah, man, I think it's fine. Kind of, it looks weird seeing a woman flying around on a revolver, I guess, but I don't dislike it at the same time. I can understand some people being like, dude, what the fuck is this? You know? Like, what the fuck? I've got a motorbike now. Okay. But yeah, I don't have an issue with it. Yeah, good video, guys, as well. Like I said, if you haven't checked out Gacha Gamer, go show him some love. Show him some love. Good content.